So back to you and your brothers and sister-in-law. Where were you taken on the U.S. Midway?
From the Midway, I was transferred by landing craft, the kind of landing craft used on Normandy Beach in World War II. Everybody saw those landing craft in the movies. Yes, one of those landing craft from the Midway to the USS Thomaston, where we were processed. And I remember the officer who processed my brother and me was an Asian, an Asian naval officer. They must count the Vietnamese refugees, so they must make a manifesto. They must count all of us. From the Thomaston, I was transferred by helicopter this time, small helicopter from ship to ship to a civilian transport ship, the American courier. The American courier brought me to about 1,000 of us on the ship to Guam. On the way to Guam, I had another glimpse at Subic Bay, the huge American naval base in the Philippines. And at Guam, it was peaceful already. I spent about a week on Guam, just eating, sleeping, and reading. From Guam, I flew a military plane to Wake Island in the middle of the Pacific, and I liked it right away. I had the island to myself, the beach and the ocean, and total peace. I enjoyed it. And the whole library of the base, it was an American Air Force base, abandoned base. They left all the books behind for me. I liked it.
Who was with you at this point?
My brother. My brothers were with me. We were not separated. Many of us were separated in the cars. And they like it, sure. But from there, we must go to the mainland. So we were asked where we wanted to go. Many of us had relatives in the US already, so they wanted to go where their relatives were, or they had already American friends on the mainland, so they went there. I wanted to go back to Washington, D.C. They flew me to the refugee camp closest to Washington, D.C. That was Indian Town Gap in Pennsylvania. And again, just eating and sleeping. It was peaceful. And then my brother came to pick me up, to pick us up, the brother and me. And he supported us. That was the result of my first investment in America, the youngest brother number 8. I brought him to America and sent him to the University of Maryland. So I didn't foresee that he was useful, but he was there. So we were happy to be with him, and we already had an anchor in America.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, the difficult part was to start all over again in a foreign country. So I must help my brothers first. They could hardly speak any English. So first I took the PhD to a Catholic girls' school in Maryland, outside the Beltway, in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. And I acted as his interpreter for his job interview. and the nun who interviewed him, I think it was the principal of the school, hired my brother on the spot.
Did that surprise you?
Total surprise. Total surprise.
Why do you think she hired a teacher who couldn't speak English?
For religious reason.
Uh-huh.
She told us that she had prayed to God to send Vietnamese refugees to her school. So here, a refugee, she hired him right away.
Mm.
So she took us to the school chapel, and we went down on our knees to thank God.
Mm.
It was nice. And then the second brother started to look, and all by himself, and I didn't know how, but he got a job working in a kitchen in a restaurant in Washington, D.C. So it was okay with him. Now, the big problem was the MD brother. We had to send him back to school. He had to serve an internship in a hospital. He must take an exam to get his license to practice. We needed help. Fortunately, we had NGOs to help us. There were many refugee resettlement organizations around the country. So they helped my brother get a scholarship to UC San Diego. From there, he got a scholarship to serve an internship in a hospital in Los Angeles. And then he got help from his future wife. His future wife was my own future wife's friend in Vietnam. And both girls, my future wife and my future sister-in-law, were daughters of doctors, and the two doctors were friends too.
Mm.
And my future father-in-law was a professor at the University of Saigon, and two of my MD brothers were his students.
Mm-hmm.
It was a small elite in a small country. So my brother had the help from his future wife and the help from his future father-in-law, the doctor.
Mm.
So he finally took the exam and got the license to practice in California. And he settled down. He got married. Yes, he married the girl out of gratitude, I think. It's a nice girl. And he settled down in Berkeley.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he lives on Gaines Street, Gaines Avenue, rather.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So all of your brothers were finally settled, and then it was time for you to start a new life. And you were in Washington, D.C. Did you think about trying to find a job there?
I did, but I had no time. I had to take care of my brothers first because they were the underdog. They did not speak English, so I must help them first. And then suddenly I received a call from the lady, the owner of a restaurant in Washington, D.C. She offered me a plane ticket to fly to, sorry, the restaurant in San Francisco. She offered me a plane ticket to fly to San Francisco to work in her restaurant. I said yes. And I rented, I started working as a waiter. I think I worked about just a week. And I just rented a hole in the wall for $100 a month. And one night, rather evening, not night yet, one evening I walked in Chinatown and ran into my future wife at the corner of Grant and Washington Street. And it happened that she was working at the Southeast Asian Resettlement Organization on Van Ness Avenue in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
Her job was to find employment for Vietnamese refugees.
Mm-hmm.
And she found a job for me right away. But before that big job, I was already also working in accounting for Mademoiselle of California, a women's apparel boutique in San Francisco. Again, it didn't last long because I moved from job to job too fast. So I took the bigger job right away with Berkeley Unified School District, writing textbooks to help Vietnamese students integrate fast into American society. That was a good job.
Mm. But you didn't really explain that it was really surprising that you ran into your future wife because she had been a colleague of yours back in Saigon.
Yes, it's a pleasure to go back. She was the executive officer, I would say executive secretary of the foreign minister. I was then the director of American Affairs. I outranked her. But we were very busy professionally. There was no romance or something like a romance, but no, it was not that yet. about a week before the end of the war, one of the evacuation teams of the embassy evacuated her family. My wife's best friend was the executive secretary of the American embassy in Saigon, American ambassador in Saigon. So that girl, Eva, I remember Eva, she was a Korean American. She called my wife at the foreign ministry. She told my wife, "You have 1 hour to leave Vietnam." So my wife gathered her parents and her younger sister, and in 1 hour she was driven to Saigon Airport by the American embassy.
You have a photo of her?
Yes, I have here
and your wife?
The picture of our wedding. My wife with the full head of hair and me with a full head of hair. And the future wife of the MD doctor and the MD brother.
Can you tell us their names?
Her name is Anne Triet Pham Le, ANHTUYET Pham PHAM Le LE.
That's your wife.
That's my wife, and her name has been Americanized to Anne Lee.
And her friend?
And her friend is from, my wife graduated from UCLA. From graduated from UC Berkeley. So she was a big help to my brother. She was fluent in English. She helped my brother a lot.
That's, yeah. It sounds like a very fortuitous set of circumstances that you all ran into each other. I mean, America's a big country, so.
Yes. How come we found each other?
Eventually, you went back to working as a civil servant, right, for the state of California.
From the Berkeley Unified School District, I took the first exam available to join state disability insurance. It was a good job, and it was also my ambition because I was not yet an American citizen. I couldn't work for the federal government. I could only work for state government and local government. My ambition was to seek a steady job and stability toward a retirement pension. And I got everything with that job. It was a very stressful job anyway. Very stressful. I had to work with the people who were sick or injured off the job, while workers' compensation paid for people who were sick or injured on the job. And it's not fun to work with sick and injured people. They were cranky, angry, frustrated, and I must work in a foreign language. But I was promoted too fast. I'm almost complaining. I was made a representative of my department at the Workers' Compensation Appeals Board. I must go to court every day defending my department against people who appeal our decision to reject, deny their claims. So it was hard work and not pleasant at all. When I had to work with angry people, sometimes we had to call the police to come to rescue us, including the judge. The judge was afraid too. And then I was promoted again too fast to the Workers' Compensation Appeals Board. That was where we clashed. State disability clashed with workers' compensation when a claimant was caught in between. The claimant might not know that he was sick on the job, and we state disabilities argue that he was sick on the job, or the claimant could not get any compensation from work comp. That claimant would file a claim with us, and we said, no, we can't pay you. You got hurt on the job. So it was my job to argue in court every day, and it was no fun. It was extremely stressful. So I retired as soon as possible to keep my sanity.
Yeah. Okay, you have a lot of photos of your son and his family, which you can tell us about. Your son was born in 1983.
Yes.
And you named him Winston. And why?
My son was born in 1983 in San Francisco, and we had to pick a name for him, a Vietnamese name or an English name, and I thought about an English name. And when I thought about an English name, I thought about somebody well-known. So I thought about Winston Churchill. I named him Winston Churchill. Along with Winston, I named him Winston Lay, not Winston Churchill, after Winston Churchill. Before that, I thought about calling him Stanford because I wanted to send him to Stanford even before he was born.
Disloyal as a Berkeleyan.
And I think I raised him well. First, we moved to Albany from San Francisco, where there is a swimming pool for our condo complex on Albany Hill, and a gym in our condo complex, and 2 tennis courts. All that for my son. When he grew up, he had everything he needed. And actually, he became a very good swimmer, and he became the captain of his high school swim team. And he became very good in all kinds of sports, baseball, tennis, and triathlon, surfing, just like any other California boy surfing. But I prepared him academically and professionally as soon as possible. I sent him to the French American bilingual school in Berkeley. He grew up trilingual naturally because we already spoke 3 languages at home, and he learned French in school, so it was natural for him. And then we sent him to the a Catholic school, St. Mary's College Prep High School in Berkeley also. And without knowing it, I am a Catholic, and I sent my son to a Catholic school, but it cost me a fortune because I could not buy a house, no mortgage. I couldn't buy a fancy car, no auto loan, so that I could have enough money to send him to private schools. The most expensive school is the French bilingual school. Terribly expensive. But I don't regret it. And while in high school, he excelled in high school. He was one of the 2 candidates to be valedictorian, a girl and himself. And each of them had one duty to write a good valedictorian speech. And my son wrote such a grandiose speech that it was beyond, above and beyond his level of high school education. He was in that speech, he would be speaking more like somebody above the high school level. So the faculty had a dilemma, and he was chosen as a keynote speaker to his own school. And the other girl who wrote a regular, normal valedictorian speech was the valedictorian. I prepared him also very well. Every summer, he must go to college. While in high school, he must take advanced courses. And every summer, he must take college courses on campus, on UC Berkeley. For college credit, he never had a summer vacation. After the college courses, he had about a week left each summer. So I sent him as a reward to Canada to visit with his grandparents. That was his reward. He flew all by himself. As a teenager, as a little boy, flew all by himself. And then he was a straight A student everywhere, and UC Berkeley told him to take college course, university courses, while still in high school. So the 2 schools made an arrangement so that Winston could go to high school in the morning, and then he must eat his lunch on the run, on board, to run to UC Berkeley to take the next course at UC Berkeley. And after graduation from high school, he was told by UC to, okay, now file an application form so he just filed it, signed it. He was already a UC student.
Mm. So this photo is when Winston's a UC student, but he's in a very smart uniform. What is the
Yes,
uniform?
at the university, he began to prepare for the Foreign Service.
Mm-hmm.
As a civilian, he wanted to be like his father. But he wanted to be more than that, like his father also. He wanted to be in the military. He was a very patriotic American. So he joined Navy ROTC.
Mm.
So he was splendid when he was in dress white uniform.
Mm-hmm.
He was getting dressed to go to a reception.
Mm.
And I saw those beautiful young people in white uniform like this. Beautiful.
Yes. Well, he really stands out, especially in Berkeley.
Yes, and in Berkeley, he was the president of the Foreign Service Association of Students
Mm-hmm.
on campus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So this is another side of him as an athlete. Here he's running a race in Washington, D.C.
Yes, he was participating in a triathlon. That was, I think, his third or fourth triathlon. He started participating in San Diego.
And here he's on a bicycle.
Yes.
And here is his graduation from UC Berkeley.
Theater, a Greek amphitheater.
Mm-hmm. And here he is in Washington. He was working at this point.
Yes, he was a brand new Foreign Service officer. I think it was in a ceremony on the lawn of the White House. He, right after graduating from UC San Diego, he took the Foreign Service, passed it like his father, and he must fly to Washington D.C. To take the job right away, and it happened that while in let me see, he was in still at UC Berkeley. He had an internship in the office of Senator Joe Biden.
Mm.
He liked everything about Washington D.C.
Mm-hmm.
It was exciting,
mm-hmm.
and so he was obsessed with the Foreign Service, like me, and he must be in the Foreign Service. So every morning, as a member of this national security team of his department, every morning the department must send a team to the White House to brief the vice president. By then, it was Joe Biden again. It's an old friend of his. He briefed the vice president. The vice president was the chairman of the National Security Committee. So he must be briefed every morning. So my son was part of the process.
Minh and a woman who looks like his wife in bridal dress.
This is Winston getting married in San Francisco. Because he was born in San Francisco, he wanted to come back to San Francisco to get married. So this is on his wedding day. They were on the beach with the Golden Gate Bridge in the background, and his bride was Rochelle Jacobson, a an all-American girl with an MBA and of Norwegian German descent. They were a good couple.
Mm-hmm. And here is the family with their daughter.
Yes, that was their daughter, my granddaughter Serena.
Very cute. And here is Winston again. And where is he here?
He was a diplomat at the American Embassy in Hanoi, Vietnam.
So this was his first tour abroad?
Yes.
Okay, and he went there with his whole family?
Yes.
And this is his daughter in the airplane?
Yes. My granddaughter was traveling in her mother's arms, and the flight attendant gave them a free seat for the baby, and she started carrying her own passport, diplomatic passport.
Wow.
And by the time she came back from that tour of duty, her passport was full of foreign visas.
That's quite a story. And here is Winston with...
This is another success case. The man in uniform was the American military attaché at the American Embassy in Hanoi, and he was in Vietnamese American Navy commander, a refugee.
And here is a happy picture.
Yes, this is to show the difference between the Vietnamese and the mixed race granddaughter.
Is this taken in Hanoi?
No, at home.
At home?
Yeah.
Back
Albany,
here
in
Albany.
Yes.
Okay. And here's Serena looking like a young lady.
She's already 4 years old in Washington, D.C.
So now they're back in Washington?
Yes.
And this should have been the last photo, because here is a younger Serena. And where is she?
This is a very good souvenir for her and for the family. She was playing in front of the Ho Chi Minh Mausoleum in Hanoi. She has a lot to tell her friends later.
Yes.
This was the military parade ground in front of the mausoleum, and you see the ugly Soviet style architecture.
Yes, and the flags. Well, I wanted to mention that unfortunately we don't have any photos of you. And what happened to them?
Well, after I left, my mother was so afraid that she had all my pictures burned, all my uniforms burned, all my documents burned, and I became a non-person in Vietnam. My mother was so afraid that the family might get hurt by the communists if they saw South Vietnamese uniforms all around, because all the boys in the families were in uniform. And there were guns all over the house. So she was so afraid. She made everything disappear.
And what happened to the rest of your siblings who were there? Were they taken in for questioning by the...
No, only the only one brother was left behind. That brother went to concentration camp. everybody went to concentration camp.
Mm-hmm.
My brother-in-law was sent to a camp in North Vietnam for 8 years,
Mm.
and the doctor who got stuck in Vietnam was in camp for 2 years,
Mm.
and he said that he was so hungry that once he found the egg of a house, what you call salamander, a
Mm-hmm.
house,
A salamander?
yes, a house. There is another word for that, who can climb on the wall and on the ceiling.
Gecko.
Yeah, gecko.
Mm-hmm.
He found a small egg like this. He ate it
Mm.
just for the protein in
Mm.
the egg.
Mm. Terrible. And when did you start having contact? You could call them eventually on the phone, or?
Yes. Eventually, they could. My 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 brother made money again as a civilian doctor, so he could afford. Uh, we he could keep the family house, my parents' house, and he could set up phone so that we could call one another very often.
Mm-hmm.
At first, we tried not to contact him because we were afraid that he might be in trouble with the communists
Mm.
for contacting us overseas. But he called first. He said it was quite safe.
Uh-huh. Were you afraid that the phones were bugged?
Oh yes, that's why we didn't call him. He
Mm-hmm.
called us first.
Mm-hmm. So have you ever been back to Vietnam?
No, after I left Saigon, communist soldiers came to my house 3 times to arrest me,
Mm.
and they stole my car. I lost everything, nothing left. So I wouldn't set foot in Vietnam again because the communists would arrest me as soon as I land in Saigon.
Mm.
It wouldn't be very safe.
I
And
see.
then I lost the appetite. I lost the desire, the intention to see Vietnam again. It was a nightmare for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm glad to be out of that nightmare forever.
Mm. Well, thank you very much for sharing your story today with us, Minh.
Well, thank you very much for working so hard with me. Thank you.
Thank you.